The Good Party wants a special council meeting held over the strike, saying that there's a need for accountability over the lives lost. Joining us now is Cape Town Good councillor Jonathan Cupido. Jonathan, good evening. Thanks for your time. It's absolutely devastating to talk about lives that have been lost, sort of in the wake of the strike that has taken place, that has come at a great cost not only to the families that were affected by these losses, but also to the country's reputation, especially when we see how one of those deaths has made international headlines.
Yes, good evening, ma'am. Yes, indeed. It is a huge concern. We, as Cape Town, cannot face this again. We have lost a life. Yes, one has made international news. But that was not just the only one. We had 5 people that lost their lives. We had property damaged. We had a possible, we went as far as our food security was threatened. And that is really a huge concern. It's something that we really need to deal with. And for that reason, we wrote to the City of Cape Town, because we want to have an urgent meeting to come and discuss that matter.
When we talk about the trauma that is inflicted on people as a result of the strike, it's not just the violence that people have had to deal with over the past week or so, but it's also the fact that many people who work certain jobs would also not be paid for those days that they were unable to get to their jobs.
That's correct, ma'am. There's many different stories that's been running around. I think let us go from right at the start. First and foremost, when people had to leave because of the sudden strike, people had to find their way home. I know of a story of one person that had to pay 1,500 rand just to get a vehicle to take him from Cape Town down to Mitchell's Plain. That's one case. Now you have the other cases where within our more local communities, we suddenly face the issue of there's no bread because the vehicles couldn't travel. They couldn't get into our areas because of the unrest that happened and the chaos that happened across Cape Town, which resulted in families sitting in situations where there was really just they had no way out. There was no way out. You couldn't find anything. And you had staff that simply just couldn't get to work. And one of the biggest problems is when people, the thing that our law says leads to a certain point where you as a person who if you don't pitch for work, you just simply don't get paid. And that is the result, that is the reality of the fact that people now are sitting with less money, and there are some that literally sit at looking at they might not be able to get back into work, you know. So that's the big problems that what resulted out of this strike. And that is the concerns that residents are speaking about all over. And for that like I said, for that reason, that is why we as Good are now strongly moving towards having this thing debated at the city.
One of the things that would be crucial for a sitting as the one you're proposing to look at is precisely those vulnerabilities, Jonathan, and how it is that the city can better capacitate itself so that in future, when you do have other strikes, you don't have, the city just being brought completely to its knees in the way in which we saw.
You are correct, ma'am. That is precisely the reason why we're calling for this meeting, because we only know that there is a guarantee for 14 days where engagement is going to happen. We've read many different statements, those coming from Sintako, and then we also had statements coming from the City of Cape Town. And what was very concerning about it is that these statements were quite contradicting one another. And if you look at those things, you don't have the security that after 14 days we might not face another strike. And for us then, to ensure that we don't get to that point, we need to start addressing the issues that from the city side, looking at where the city has gone wrong, so that we can prevent this from happening in the future, because it cannot be that the government would want to just sit one side and now totally just forget about it and hope that in the future this is not going to happen again. We must make sure that we put measures and things in place to ensure that this don't happen. And if it is that there was if it is officials or if it is politicians within specifically the mayoral committee member for safety and security, Alderman Smith, or even if it is our executive mayor, Jordan Hill Lewis, who has said anything wrong or have made any statement that fueled this, then we need to deal with it to ensure that we don't face this in the future, because we cannot have arrogance from government side and we expect everybody else just to follow suit. It should be from both sides exactly the same.
Have you spoken to other parties that are represented in council about this? Do you have a sense, at least, about how supported you will be?
One of it, after the statement has gone out, our one specific political party has made contact with me and has asked me to brief around the issue. I've also spoken to, in fact, I've spoken to 2 different political parties in the city of Cape Town who actually reached out to me that I didn't even reach out to yet or didn't reach out to, and they are quite interested in this matter, and they are saying that they feel that we should really get this thing addressed, dealt with, because they also believe that if we're not going to do anything from our side as the city jointly, then definitely we're going to sit in with the same issue in the future.
All right. Good Councillor Jonathan Cupido. He, of course, sits in the council in Cape Town. Thanks for your time tonight.